Hey guys, I'm Evan and this is Magnolias in Sunlight. Today we are on day 8 of my series DIY or Die, where we make a Halloween inspired DIY project every day in the month of October. And with all of those projects, we've done a whole week of really fun projects. I will link a playlist somewhere on the screen so you guys can check those out if you want to. I have had to order a couple of supplies. Not a lot because we love thrifting on this channel and we love using what we already own. But the things I have ordered have led to some cardboard boxes laying around, which is what we're going to use to make today's project. We're gonna make a marquee sign completely out of cardboard. Used cardboard that would normally go in the recycling bin, we're gonna turn into something beautiful. So with Life of a Showgirl coming out, I wanted to do something kind of in that aesthetic, that showgirl, like marquee sign on theater aesthetic. So grab your orange glitter and a cardboard box, and let's make a marquee sign. To start off, we're gonna take one large piece of cardboard. I like this one because it's already the height that I want my letters to be, so it just saves us a little bit of cutting. And then I go across and measure out 8 inches, and that's gonna be the width of our letters. Luckily, this piece of cardboard also just so happened to fit 3 8-inch letters on it very well. I wanted it to look balanced, and so the 8-inch mark just made sense in my head, and then it worked out when I drew it out on the cardboard. So sometimes we get lucky. And then I'm gonna go in with a Sharpie so that I can make some thicker lines, and I'm gonna segment out where my 3 letters are gonna go. And I'm leaving a gap in between each one, and that's just a little insurance for cutting to make sure that when I'm cutting, if I overcut, I'm not slicing in to the next letter. But in reality, if you wanna save all of your material or use as much material as possible, you could just bump them up next to one another. So for our fonts, you're gonna want to pick something that has a flat bottom. So I am using like a very Letterman looking font, something very sporty looking. I will put up the letters that I'm using on the screen, and I'm choosing to just freehand these onto the cardboard because it's basically just a bunch of straight lines. But if you want, you could always print something out and then trace it and then cut it out. I'm just skipping a step, but I totally get there's a lot of measuring. If it looks to be a little crazy and too much for you, print them out and trace them on. So then the other thing to think about is to pull out your lights, because we want the channels for our lights to obviously fit the globe lights that you have. So I laid them out and kind of tried to figure out how wide I would need these to be without it looking too crowded, and got 2.5 inches. So our channel or our full background is going to be 2.5 inches, and then we'll build our walls on top of that. And once you have all of your pieces drawn out, you can see my very diagram looking letters here. You just cut them out. I use scissors. You could use a box cutter. I do end up going back with the interior parts of the letters and using an X-Acto knife, but I found scissors worked pretty well. It was a little trickier to cut at these areas where it was like double layered, but I wanted to keep that for a little added stability of our letters, and I made do. And it was okay. And then with the rest of our cardboard, we're gonna cut out 2.5 inch strips. Okay, friends, so I have made the first 2. And now I'm gonna show you how we get to this box stage. So we're basically building a box out of a box, which maybe there's a faster way to do this, but if there is, I haven't found it. So we're going to take our strip, and you actually, or at least I do, I'm trying to not get glue like to rub into my cork. So put something underneath that you're not terribly concerned about. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our letter and we're going to outline it with this cardboard strip. The point here is that you want this to be on the outside, like here, because we want this out, like the exterior part, to be seamless. If we do it here, then you need to cover that up. But if you put it on top of that seam, you aren't going to have that corrugated look. Hopefully that makes sense. So glue on the outside, and then it's kind of like using your glue gun as a caulk gun, and you just put your glue in that seam and then hold it to dry. And then around the edges, I find that it's helpful to use like a ruler or to fold them the opposite direction. You want to really maintain those corners around our letters so that you get that boxy marquee looking sign. Normally these would be made out of like sheet metal. So getting those sharp edges is going to really help get that sheet metal look rather than it being out of cardboard. All right, and now that we are all glued together, we're going to take some paper tape. I'm using the kind that you put on the back of framing projects. I will link it down below, but I like it because it's the same color or close to the same color as our cardboard. And when we go to paint, we're not going to get like any kind of crazy lines. At this point, I should also mention that it's helpful to take off all of the blue tape of your, like one of these was an Amazon box, or any of the like labels, all of that. Take that off so you don't have to deal with those when you're painting. But we're going to take this tape, and it's extra wide, so I cut it long ways in half, and then we tape the edges of our box. Again, we want this to look like a nice clean welded project. You can kind of point your corners a little bit better if some of them have started to round, and it gets rid of that corrugated look. I'm not going to have that open jagged edge. This also helps if your cutting wasn't super perfect. You can just smooth everything out with a little bit of tape. So go all the way around all of your open edges. You can see the B on that side, how clean that looks in comparison to this O that we're working on. It's just a nice way to clean it up. All right, so that's what it looks like when it's all taped up. We have all of our letters here. We have 2 O's. We're gonna go outside and we're gonna spray paint these with our black spray paint. And then I'm gonna go in the basement and see if I have some terracotta spray paint to do the insides to help move the next step along a little bit. But we'll see, it might be all gone. Okay, so we have our letters. They are painted black on the outside, and they're still at the stage where they're like a little tacky. But I am impatient and want to keep going. Plus I still need to, edit, and we're losing the light. So today did not go as planned. I also forgot to mention, you can see here that I poked holes, and I forgot to do it in this one. So I'm going to grab my X-Acto and then just show you how I do it. These are the holes that we're gonna put our lights through. So the lights that I bought, the globes come off of the light. So what you're left with is just a little fairy light, which we can shove through these little holes through the back, and then we can reattach the globe inside of the box. And that way we're not having to cut a hole big enough to fit the whole light through, just the fairy light rather than the whole globe. And then we're just gonna go ahead and paint. All right, so this is where we're at. This is a combination of the burnt orange chalk paint and this suede paint. I refuse to go out and buy more paint. I'm using what I have, so that's why we have gone with these 2 colors. The suede is on the edges and the burnt orange is on the background. And then I'm gonna go back and do one more layer of this, as much as I can get out of this bottle. It is almost empty, so I'm using the dregs, and I had planned to use this fresh matte bottle of beautiful orange paint, except it's not opaque at all. So this is where we're at, and then we will go in with some chunky glitter, and then we'll go in with some fine orange glitter, and then we're gonna pop our cute little baubles back in and turn them on and light these guys up. And I want to apologize for the crazy lighting change that happened in these last two clips. A huge thunderstorm blew in out of nowhere, and it went from daylight to total darkness in a matter of minutes. So I had to pop on the ring light so that you guys could see what I'm doing. But we're just going to go through here and then touch up the edges to make sure that those are black and not orange. Now that our orange paint is dry, we're going to go in with our chunkiest glitter. So whatever that is for you, I'm using this rose gold glitter paint, and I'm putting it directly on my brush and then spreading it out as much as it'll go, trying to get all of those chunks like kind of evenly spaced. It's a little more difficult because this one is really irregular, like the glitter chunks in it are quite irregular, but we just want to try and coat everything in a good layer of this chunky glitter. And I find that it helps because you're pushing so hard to have it on a flat surface. So paint the back and then turn your cardboard and then paint the edges after the back is painted. Okay, so my favorite technique when using glitter is to put it in a little container and then pour Mod Podge into it and make your own glitter paste. It just contains the glitter first of all. You're not sprinkling and then clearing and then sprinkling and then clearing. And I just use a little, this is an hors d'oeuvre pick from the kitchen. And you can buy like these in bulk, it's bamboo. And you want to just create a spreadable paste. So you'll need to kind of combine until it's paintable is the texture you're looking for. And it will go on milky, but because you're using Mod Podge, it will then dry totally clear. I recommend using the gloss because we want to obviously keep that glitter. But again, this is a project where we're trying to not use anything that we don't already have. It makes your glitter, I think, go a lot further because you can spread it out evenly in even paintable coats. And like I said, see, it's going on like as a putty color, but that's all gonna dry down and we will be left with a crazy brilliant orange glitter backdrop with some of this other glitter, the chunkier glitter, showing through. But this is going to be a nice just final layer to really catch the light. So I'm not gonna lie, these are still a little wet, but for some reason, I've just had a lot of anxiety doing this project and like worried about getting it done. I have time, I'm not sure why I'm worried, but I'm just gonna go through and detangle these lights and then we're gonna start lighting up the boxes so that we can just kind of see where we're at. All right, so these are untangled now, and I didn't count them or like even really think about this before I ordered them, which I should have, but there are 30 lights on this strand. So that means we can use 10 per letter, which is great. Should have planned that out ahead of time. I did not. So maybe you can learn from that minor mistake. Now we're gonna go backwards. So this is, obviously, we're working from the back, and we want our connection point between the letters to be these two corners, because when we flip this one, it'll be on the inside. So we're gonna go starting here, and we already have our little holes that we made, and we're gonna push our light through, and then I'm gonna keep all of these bubbles here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's gonna be too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. Again, should have measured that out before. So now that all the wires are pushed into place, I'm going to go through with some tape and tape them down so that you can't see like the excess wire in between the letters or poking in between like the holes in the B or the O's, whatever. You could, in theory, glue these down. Using hot glue on this wire always makes me really nervous. I have done it, but not only is having it taped down easier for taking it off and reusing these lights later, we're not going to have to worry about maybe potentially burning the wire and breaking the circuit. So that I just find that taping is the safer bet. And then we're going to flip them back over and pop the globes back on to all of the lights. And I can't wait to show you this reveal. I didn't know they'd do that, but that was an even better reveal than I expected. All right, guys, and that is how we turn cardboard into something beautiful. I was thinking as I was making this, you could easily attach this to a wagon for trick-or-treating, and if you're not into Halloween, you could do this for your favorite sports team. Either way, it's going to turn out great. And with that, I'll see you tomorrow.